Today we're diving into the life of Valar, this 19th century Tamil saint who...
Valar, I mean, he wasn't just some saint. He was he was a social reformer, a poet, even a philosopher.
Right, okay, so to kind of unpack this whole thing, for this deep dive, we've got some excerpts from Life History of Valar,
Okay.
and then also his Wikipedia page.
Oh.
So we've got two different sources here.
That's great, yeah. It's like the more sources you have, it's kind of like having more witnesses to an event, right?
Right, totally.
You can kind of get a more well-rounded view of what was really going on.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Okay, so Vallalar, who was also known as, are you ready for this, Ramalinga Swamigal, or Ramalinga Adigal, was born in 1823 near Chidambaram in Tamil Nadu. Okay, but here's where it gets like super interesting. At 5 months old, he had like this intense experience at the Chidambaram Natarajar temple.
Wow.
So picture this, 5-month-old baby, right? They're doing this Deepa Aradhana, this ritual where they light thousands of oil lamps.
Wow.
Right? Symbolizing that like dispelling of darkness. And he, according to accounts, had this profound spiritual awareness, not a baby's typical amusement.
Can you imagine at 5 months old?
I know, it's crazy.
That would do something to a person, you know, at any age, but 5 months old. That's wild.
Totally.
It's no wonder that even at such a young age that he like gravitated toward the spiritual. I mean, he wasn't interested in formal education. You know, he wanted to spend his time at the Kandaswami temple.
Right. I mean, I feel you. I was way more into exploring the world than sitting in a classroom.
Yeah.
Like some of us are just wired differently, you know?
Totally.
And it seems like his path was leading him towards these deeper spiritual truths.
Yeah.
And then he had a vision of Lord Muruga.
Oh, wow.
While meditating in front of a mirror and a lamp.
Okay.
So not just some fleeting daydream, right? Like
No. Sounds like this is a true vision. It's like a glimpse into like the divine realm or something.
And get this, he was already delivering these insightful religious discourses.
What?
As a young boy, people would come to hear him like share his understanding of the Pera Porinam, which is this revered Tamil epic poem.
I mean, that's pretty impressive for a young boy.
I know.
It sounds like he just had this innate ability to not just grasp, but like share these really complicated spiritual concepts. I mean, at that age, it's amazing.
Totally. Okay, so we've got this spiritually gifted child. He's already like making waves with his like takes and everything.
Right.
And then he makes this decision that surprised a lot of people. He renounced the material world.
Oh, wow.
At 13?
At 13 years old.
Talk about commitment.
Yeah.
But then he was later, like, compelled by society to marry his niece.
Okay, so it sounds like kind of a push and pull with, like, societal norms.
Right, exactly. And this is what I find so fascinating about him. He kind of had this unconventional approach to spirituality.
Okay.
And societal norms. Because even though he got married, like, he still, like, was like, I don't need to eat as much, I don't need to sleep as much, all while like maintaining his physical health.
Really?
Yep.
Like, was it some sort of specific practice or?
I don't know. There's a lot of interpretations, but they often describe it as this spiritual transformation.
Okay.
That like impacted his physical being.
Interesting.
Right. It's like he was showing that you can be liberated beyond the limitations of the material world, even our bodies.
Yeah, breaking all the rules.
Totally. And this disregard for societal norms wasn't just him, like not sleeping. He was like very critical of the caste system.
Right, which was obviously a huge part of like life in India at that time.
Huge.
Yeah.
And he really believed in the equality and the worth of all beings. Like no matter, you know, your social standing, none of that.
It's so interesting because that message is so relevant even today.
I know.
It's like timeless.
It's so ahead of his time.
And he formalized this by creating the Samarasa Sutta Sanmarga Satya Sangam.
Okay, say that 5 times fast. I'm so curious. What does that even mean?
Oh, yeah, that's a mouthful, isn't it? It translates to basically the Society for Pure Truth in Universal Selfhood.
Okay.
And this wasn't just about like spiritual enlightenment. It was like a whole social movement.
Gotcha.
To get rid of the caste system, to promote equality for everybody.
It's a powerful statement,
Right.
especially back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he didn't just talk the talk. He walked the walk, right? He was advocating against animal sacrifice. He promoted a meatless lifestyle. He even established the Sai Dharma Salai to feed poor people.
I mean, that's incredible. And that Salai, it's still going today.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
This place founded on this idea that you give food to everyone, no matter who they are, no matter their circumstance, and it's still going over a century later.
It's like food for the soul, ain't body.
Exactly.
What a legacy. But he also challenged a lot of traditional religious practices too, right? He wasn't about the whole idol worship thing.
Right.
He was all about inner spirituality, like connecting with what he called the formless divine.
Yeah, that's so interesting because you see that a lot, even today, right?
Totally.
This idea that the real transformation, it has to come from within. It's about cultivating that compassion, that love, that connection to the divine. And I think that's something that really resonates, even now.
He was so ahead of his time. And to create like a physical space for this inner transformation, he built the Sakyajnana Sabhai, the Hall of True Knowledge, in Vallalar.
Okay.
But this wasn't like a temple.
So it wasn't like a typical religious space, like a place of worship.
Right, exactly. He wanted a secular space where people from all walks of life could come together for reflection, contemplation.
Okay, I like it.
But only if they didn't eat meat.
Oh, interesting. So there was a caveat.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
It's interesting, right? He was all about this jiva karunyam,
Okay.
which is compassion for all living beings. It was so central to his whole philosophy. He thought that abstaining from meat was like a way of minimizing harm.
Showing compassion.
Exactly. And promoting harmony, like between all creatures.
Well, I mean, you can see how that all ties together.
Right, totally. So everyone was welcome in this Hall of True Knowledge, except if they ate meat. It's interesting how he wove this whole compassion thing into all of his teachings. But tell me more about this hall. What was it like inside?
Well, he designed it to be a space without a lot of, like, religious stuff, you know, to help people look inward and connect with the divine more directly. So there were these 7 cotton screens that each symbolized a veil that, like, hides our true nature. And then there's this chain with 21,600 links on it. And that represented the average number of breaths a human takes in a day.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. I got a little lost in the numbers there. Like 7 screens, 21,600 links. What's the deeper meaning? Why are those details so important?
It's easy to get caught up in the specifics, you're right. But it's really cool how these symbols kind of work on you without you even realizing it. Like those screens, they weren't just physical things, right? They represented all those illusions and attachments, things we hold on to that prevent us from seeing our true selves and like how we're all connected.
I see. So it's like walking through those screens could be this process of letting go, of getting closer to like the truth of who we are.
Exactly. And that chain with all those links, it makes you think about how precious every breath is, you know, every moment we have. It's like this push to be more aware, more present, because we don't have unlimited time here, you know?
Like he was creating this like walking meditation, right? Just by being in that space, you're forced to think about life and death.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And speaking of a constant presence, Vallalar, he lit an oil lamp in the hall, and he said it was supposed to be kept burning all the time. It wasn't just about having a light. It represented that eternal flame, the Arut Peram Joy. He believed that light lives inside all of us.
Okay, Arut Peram Joy. We've talked about this, but it feels like this is a pretty important concept for him. Can you break that down? What does it really mean? Like, how is it different from how people usually think about God?
Yeah, so it's usually translated as the divine light of grace, but it's like way more than just a name for God. Think of it like this radiant energy, this force of pure love and compassion that's everywhere, in everything. That's Arut Peram Joy. It's not some distant being out there. It's here, now, in us, and all around us.
So instead of praying to God, he's saying, hey, that divinity, it's already inside you. It's like shining through as this light of grace.
Exactly. And to experience it, it's not about rituals or dogmas or anything like that. It's about living a life of compassion, love, selfless service. Remember Jiva Karunyam.
Right.
That's what it's all about.
So by being compassionate, by like really living that,
yeah,
we can actually tap into that divine light. That's a pretty powerful idea. And it feels really relevant, you know, like especially today. In a world that feels so self-centered, it's a good reminder.
Absolutely. And he took this whole interconnectedness thing even further. He was like, what if death, how we think about it, what if it's not what we think?
Okay, this is where it gets super interesting. So he believed that death wasn't the end. But what did he think happened? Was it reincarnation, like a lot of Eastern traditions, or was it something else?
He didn't really get into any one doctrine, but he truly believed that death, how we see it, it wasn't natural.
Okay.
He saw it as this like symptom of us being spiritually ignorant, this disconnect from Arut Peram Joy, because that's what sustains life, right?
If death isn't like the natural end, what did he think was possible?
This is where it gets really exciting. He thought that if we fully align with Arut Peram Joy, by being compassionate, by being loving, by always looking for the truth, we could like transcend these physical body and achieve this state of spiritual liberation.
So basically, by really living those virtues, we could like overcome death itself. That's a pretty radical idea. Did he ever go into detail about what that would look like, that transcendence?
He did, and he wasn't just like this philosopher. He was a writer too, and a good one. He wrote a ton of poems and texts where he explained all of this beautifully.
That's right. He wrote over 5,000 poems, right? Weren't they all in that book? What was it called?
Thurvarutpa. It means Holy Book of Grace.
The Ruvarutpa.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize it was actually first compiled as Six Thuru Murigal, but everyone knows it as Thurvarutpa these days. But he also wrote Manumarai Kandavasagam, which is about the life of this righteous king, and then Jiva Karunya Uzukam, which, again, really emphasizes that importance of having compassion for everything, every living being.
Wow, that's a lot of writing. It seems like he really wanted to make sure that his teachings, lived on.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't just like some abstract stuff. He gave people real advice on ethical living, and a big part of that was a plant-based lifestyle. He said that was key for Jiva Karunyam.
So we had this fascinating guy, a true trailblazer, right?
Yeah.
He challenged everything, promoted radical compassion, and then he wrote a ton about it. He even built a place where people could go to experience these teachings. What a legacy.
It really is. But it's what happens at the end of his life that really gets people. That's what made him this legend.
You're talking about his disappearance. So on January 30th, 1874, Vallalar just vanishes, poof, gone. But what happened? What led up to that?
So it's not like it was this random thing. It was clearly planned out, mysterious for sure, but it was also really symbolic when you think about it. In the days before his teachings, they started to change a bit.
How so? What was he saying?
He was talking more about transcendence and the limitations of our physical forms. He even talked about the possibility of existing beyond, like anything we could really understand. It was almost like he was prepping everyone for something huge.
So he's dropping all these hints about like going beyond, about transcendence, right? Like he's getting his followers ready. But then what? What actually happened? How did he disappear?
So it's January 30th, 1874, and he gathers everyone, all his followers, and gives this final lecture.
Okay.
And it's this really deep talk about the soul and like its journey to the divine light. And then he tells everyone to leave.
Really?
Yeah, he says, everyone out of my house. It was this like one-room house. They called it Siddhi Vallagam. And he says, leave and lock the door behind you.
So he's basically saying, peace out, got to go transcend now.
Basically. Oh, but he left a lamp burning outside. It's like this symbol, right?
Yeah.
His physical body might be gone, but his teachings, the light of those would remain.
I love that.
So his followers, they do what he says, they lock the door and they wait.
Okay, this is the part where everyone's listening. Like, what happened?
Days go by, then weeks, and people are talking and the authorities are like, what's going on? They're worried. So finally, they open the room and it's empty.
He's gone, just like that.
Yeah.
Did they find anything, clues, anything that could explain where he went or how he did it?
Nothing. No signs of anything, really. No secret passages, no struggle, nothing. It was like he just vanished. Like he said he would. He transcended.
I mean, come on. This isn't just someone going off the grid. This is next level. But we have his writings right. Maybe there were some clues in those.
That's right. And while he never gave a step-by-step guide to transcendence, there's this poem, Yanasariyai, and it has some pretty interesting lines. He talks about uniting with nature and ruling the actions of all of the alls.
Okay, so like reaching a whole other level of consciousness where you're not held back by time or space.
It's a pretty wild idea, right? Makes you wonder, what if he really did reach this incredible level of enlightenment? And that's how he decided to leave, when and how.
Mind-blowing. So he just disappears. And centuries later, we're still talking about him.
It shows how powerful his life and his teachings were.
Totally. But his message, it's still alive, isn't it? People still follow his teachings today.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in Tamil Nadu, There are all these groups, these organizations that are dedicated to keeping his message going, the message of compassion, of equality, of spiritual liberation. They try to live out Arut Peram Joy, you know. They're vegetarian. They're all about service to others, and they believe in that interconnectedness, that love.
It's like his light is still shining
Yeah,
through them.
exactly. And it goes beyond that even. In 2007, India, they made postage stamps to honor him and his teachings.
Wow. So we started with this baby having this crazy experience at a temple. Then this young guy challenges everything about his society, becomes a leader, and then poof, he's gone. But his legacy, it's still here. It's a lot to process.
It really is. But, you know, maybe that's the whole point.
Maybe it is. Valar's life, his disappearance, it reminds us that there's so much we don't know. There's more out there, more than we can even imagine. He taught us to be open to those possibilities, to never stop asking questions, to see how much potential we have to change, to transform, to transcend even. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the incredible life of Valar, we have a final question for you. What if death isn't the end? How would you live your life differently? Would you embrace that compassion? Would you seek out that light of grace within yourself? Something to think about, right?